Good evening, Little Masters, and welcome to episode 324 of the Prancing Pony Podcast, where, well, I've stopped counting the number of times I've been told to do now thy office.
Yeah, usually in the context of cleaning your office, I would imagine.
Yeah, here's the vacuum cleaner. Do your office.
Folks, I'm Sarah Brown, Shield-maiden of Rohan, and I'm here with the man of the West, ancient of days he seemed, and yet... No, I'm going to leave it there. Alan Sisto.
Oh, wow. Just ancient of days.
Just ancient of days. Bless his heart.
Brutal. Oh, no. Bless his heart. Is that's one of those little sideways things like it is in the South. Oh, bless your heart. Yeah, That's what I thought. All right.
But at least I didn't attempt the accent.
Well, I am grateful for that.
Small mercies.
Exactly. Folks, join us as the ever-patient Aragorn finally gets his shiny new hat in the third of 4 episodes on the Steward and the King, the 5th chapter in Book 6 of The Lord of the Rings.
No matter how you arrive, folks, you're all welcome here in the common room. At the Prancing Pony Podcast, we are reading and talking our way through Middle-earth with plenty of speculation and really bad jokes along the way.
Sadly, yes. We love deep dives into the lore, discussing our favorite themes, and a whole lot more.
But we do try to keep it light and fun, like a couple of old friends chatting at the pub. And we're glad you've joined us.
Don't forget your teeth. And I'm sure you'll be glad you joined as well. But before we get to tonight's chapter discussion, it's time to welcome one of our listeners to the North Wing. And today, I am pleased to bring you a new installment of The North Wing. Now, we know that Barnum Butterbur had a room or two in the North Wing at the Prancing Pony Inn that he made special for hobbits. Well, this North Wing is the PPP's place made special for some of our listeners, to give us all a chance to get to know them. Rooms at the North Wing are a little hard to come by these days, so only our patrons at the Bobadil's Bequest and Kierdan's Contribution tiers are eligible. So if you'd like to be one of the next patrons to join us, please be sure to check out patreon.com/prancingponypod. Now, there is still a bit of a queue for the North Wing right now, but we are working through them, and I'm going to get to all of them soon, maybe even some of them with one of my co-hosts. For now, though, please welcome tonight's brave guest solo here to the North Wing, Elizabeth Perico.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure to have you. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? What do you do? Do your loved ones merely tolerate your nerdiness, or do they share it with you? That sort of thing.
All right. Well, I am from Kansas, which for our overseas listeners is right in the middle of the Helcoroxy right now in the Midwest.
Yeah.
I work at a tree care and landscaping business. So I basically schedule crews that go out and trim people's trees.
Okay.
So maybe an Ent master, you might say?
Yeah. Well, I hope you're not cutting down too many of them. Tolkien might have words to say about that.
No, our goal is to let them live.
Okay, good. Treebeard doesn't have to come give you a visit.
No. Yeah, and so as far as my family and friends, it's a bit of both. Especially my aunt and my mom, they understand it. My aunt is a reference librarian, and my mom, I actually have gotten her reeled in now.
Oh, wow,
and
good.
Reading the books. Yeah, so that's great.
That's always rewarding.
Very much so, yeah. The rest of my family, they think I'm weird, but they tolerate it.
They're like, don't ask Elizabeth about the Lord of the Rings. Please don't. You'll be there all day, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I cannot identify with that at all. I don't have anybody leave the room when I walk in at every family gathering. No, I hear you. So, of course, I have to ask you the question that we ask everybody, whoever gets on the Prancing Pony Podcast, which is, when and how did you first discover Tolkien's works? What was your experience like? And then what is it that keeps you coming back?
Okay. So honestly, I just remember being familiar with the stories pretty much my whole life, my whole childhood. It was just, I've always been that kind of nerdy kid that likes to read books and daydream, sneak out of recess and go into the library. And I still remember being in grade school and this big poster of the old Hobbit animated one with Gandalf and that being a thing. I actually didn't read The Hobbit, though, probably until 4th or 5th grade in school, and loved it. And then it wasn't until I was in middle school I got the Lord of the Rings set from my brother and read it then. Although by that time, unfortunately, one of my classmates had spoilered Boromir's fate.
Oh no! They could have spoiled anything but that.
I know, right? That was sad. At the time, I was still kind of living in Narnia. That I had loved the Chronicles of Narnia from childhood, and as I got older, I slowly moved to Middle Earth.
Yeah.
And what keeps me coming back, the books are just so exquisitely written. It's a world you want to live in. You feel like you know these characters and in these places. It really has, in so many ways, enriched, inspired me to be creative. I learned something, not just going back. Every time you read the text, you find something new in the stories. But learning, getting me into Anglo-Saxon and into Beowulf and all these other worlds that just opens up so much. And they're just great stories. I love reading them.
That is great. That is great. Well, what is your favorite book in the Legendarium and why? And then do you have a favorite non-Legendarium work?
So hands down would be the Silmarillion for...
Oh, okay. So what is it about the Silmarillion in particular compared to The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings?
It's just that... what does Tolkien call it? That loft, that elevated, that high romance and adventure. It just, I didn't read it until actually I was an adult.
Yeah. It's a very challenging book. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't even know about it for a long time. And then when I did, I was like, I'm going to read it. I'm going to get to it. And when I finally did, I was just enchanted. I think I wept a little when I finished it because I didn't want it to end.
Yeah. I can understand that. What about a non-Legendarium work? You mentioned Beowulf. I suppose that could be one, since Tolkien does have his own translation, but maybe you prefer the Seamus Heaney translation. I don't know.
Definitely Tolkien. I've got both. Nothing against Seamus. He's great, but Tolkien's is just much more beautiful. But my favorite non-Legendarium book would have to be Smith of Wootton Major.
Okay. Smith of Wootton Major. That's a good choice. That's a really good choice. I know that work meant a lot to Professor Tolkien himself. That was, it was the last book of his that was published in his lifetime. And, I'm going through it right now, actually, for the other podcast for today's Tolkien Times, and I've really enjoyed that process. So, Elizabeth, any Tolkien goals that you'd like to share? Maybe tracking down a book for your collection or giving a paper to Moot, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to collect the, I think it's the Valentine. It's maybe the 77 set that had Tolkien's art on it, paperbacks. I found 2 of them at a bookstore.
Oh.
And I'm still trying to get the others. And I know I could just order them online, but it's just more fun to find them in the wild.
That is challenging to do. Here in the States, it is much harder than folks who are in the UK and are just like, oh, I popped into whatever. And sure enough, there's a rare volume of The Hobbit that they could pick up for 20 pounds. Yeah.
Right.
Good stuff. All right. Well, now we're going to go ahead and move into a lightning round. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the idea of a lightning round, it means, in theory, quick answers. So do what you can. Favorite scene or moment in the Legendarium?
Oh, okay. That's tough. I would have to say, do I have to
I
pick
didn't
one?
say they were easy questions. They're just lightning round questions.
When Tuor is going through the 7 gates up to Gondolin.
Yes.
Yes. Just amazing. That, or when the elves awaken at Cuiviénen.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, those are both really, really powerful scenes.
Yeah.
Okay, those work. Who's your favorite elf from the first age?
Oh, Glorfindel, easily.
Oh, wow. Okay. Favorite dwarf, any age?
Gimli.
Gimli. Okay. Favorite poem or song in the Legendarium?
Lay of Lathian.
Wow. Okay. Pick the big one. Okay, fair enough. Favorite Tolkien artist, or if you have one, an individual work of art, a piece of art?
Yenny Dolphin.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yenny's work is fantastic.
Yeah,
that's true.
She's great.
All right. Well, that was great. Thank you, Elizabeth. I really enjoyed having you here in the North Wing.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was great.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Well, folks, it is time for us to all head back to the common room and join the rest of the listeners. And Elizabeth, I hope I'll see you back here in the common room at our next Questions After Nightfall. For now, though, we return you to the podcast in progress.
It's always a pleasure to hear from our listeners. And it's finally time to crown a king. So let's get into it. Alan, would you lead us off?
I'd be happy to. I'm going to go ahead and skip the first paragraph after we left off last week. At last an evening came when from the walls the pavilions could be seen upon the field, and all night lights were burning as men watched for the dawn. And when the sun rose in the clear morning above the mountains in the east, upon which shadows lay no more, then all the bells rang, and all the banners broke and flowed in the wind. And upon the white tower of the citadel, the standard of the stewards, bright argent like snow in the sun, bearing no charge nor device, was raised over Gondor for the last time. Now the captains of the west led their host towards the city, and folk saw them advance in line upon line, flashing and glinting in the sunrise and rippling like silver. And so they came before the gateway and halted a furlong from the walls. As yet no gates had been set up again, but a barrier was laid across the entrance to the city, and there stood men-at-arms in silver and black with long swords drawn. Before the barrier stood Faramir the steward, and Hurin, warden of the keys, and other captains of Gondor, and the lady Eowyn of Rohan, with Elfhelm the marshal and many knights of the mark. And upon either side of the gate was a great press of fair people in raiment of many colors and garlands of flowers. So now there was a wide space before the walls of Minas Tirith, and it was hemmed in upon all sides by the knights and the soldiers of Gondor and of Rohan, and by the people of the city and of all parts of the land. A hush fell upon all, as out from the host stepped the Dunedain in silver and gray, and before them came walking slow the Lord Aragorn. He was clad in black mail girt with silver, and he wore a long mantle of pure white, clasped at the throat with a great jewel of green that shone from afar. But his head was bare, save for a star upon his forehead, bound by a slender fillet of silver. With him were Eomer of Rohan, and the Prince Imrahil, and Gandalf robed all in white, and 4 small figures that many men marveled to see. Indeed they did. And one very verbose woman as well, but we'll get to her.
We'll get to her. Oh, that was lovely. It's so solemn, isn't it? It's a beautiful, quiet, solemn moment, full of portent.
The slow walking and everything just, yes.
Oh, beautiful. So in that first paragraph that we had to skip, Minas Tirith is getting ready for the big day.
Yes, they are.
Lots of people arriving from all over Gondor. We get a list of some of those places: Min Rimon, Pinath-Gelin, the Anfalas, which is the far coast of the sea.
That's right. And this echoes the first part of Book 5 with all the soldiers coming in from all over Gondor. But now it's not just the soldiers coming to help defend the city with the civilians leaving. It's the civilians. It's women and fair children that have come home and are celebrating. I love that. And musicians too. I wanted to, I know we had to skip something, so we chose this one to skip, but we've got the harpers from Dol Amroth, and I've got to wonder, why are they the most skillful? And part of me thinks it's their likely descent from elves. I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah.
You know, they're possibly descended from many, many generations, but yeah, there's certainly some elven blood there. Violinists, we got flute players, horn players, and even singers. There's a mention that there's a region that specializes in singing, apparently, like Dol Amroth specializes in harping. But it is interesting. Yeah.
It is. We picked up our reading with the arrival of the evening of April 30th. And now Aragorn and all the people we were celebrating with last chapter on the field of Cormallen have come and set up their tents outside the city. I think they've brought loads and loads of musicians with them as well.
Because they were having it's a festival.
Oh, yeah. They were having a festival in the field of Cormallen. So, yeah. But it's a sleepless night, but in a good way, as the people await the dawn of May the 1st.
And wow, the way Tolkien describes that dawn.
Oh, yeah.
It's beautiful. I mean, first, we've got no more shadows on the mountains to the east. Remember, folks, that the mountains to the east are the Ephel Duath, the mountains of shadow. And here they are described as no longer being in shadow.
I think that's important, don't you?
So symbolic, yeah.
Yeah.
And then we get the Parataxis again, which we'll see a couple more times in this chapter. All the bells and the banner and the citadel. It's just, once again, Tolkien reaching into his bag of tricks.
Yep. Yeah. And we want to talk about this moment where the standard of the stewards was raised over the city for the final time.
Yes. I mean, look, I know I've harped on this 100 times over the last couple of seasons, but the vast amount of years that have passed since the ruling stewards have been in charge of Gondor is just staggering.
It is, yeah. And if you look, you can find copies of that line of stewards, and you just see it goes down and down and down and down and down and down and down. And there's so many. Yeah. Eärnur was the 33rd and last king of Gondor. Yeah. Right, but before he became king, he sailed north to attempt to save Arvedui, the last king of Arthedain, the final remnant of the realm of Arnor. Now, though he did not succeed in that effort, he, with Glorfindel, defeated Angmar and earned the chief hatred of the Witch King. And that's in the Third Age 1975.
Yeah, just a bit ago. This is 3019. Now, we read about Eärnur in Appendix A that he was a man like his father in valor, but not in wisdom. I love that.
Yes.
That's not the brightest bulb in the box. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So he was brawny but dumb.
He was a man of strong body, the appendix says, and hot mood, but he would take no wife, for his only pleasure was in fighting or in the exercise of arms. His prowess was such that none in Gondor could stand against him in those weapon sports in which he delighted, seeming rather a champion than a captain or king, and retaining his vigor and skill to a later age than was then usual.
Yeah, little echoes of Boromir, I've always
A little bit.
thought.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Eärnur.
Yeah.
Yes, Boromir would take no wife because his only pleasure was in fighting and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, just a little callback. But Eärnur's father, King Eärnil II, remained on the throne until he died 68 years later in Third Age 2043. Then we read that after Eärnur was crowned, the Witch King challenged him to a single combat. Now, by this point, he'd captured Minas Ithil, now renamed Minas Morgul, and most of Ithilien has been deserted.
Yeah.
And that time, this time.
The 2043 time, yeah.
Yeah, Mardil the Steward had been able to talk a bit of sense into Eärnur, but then 7 years later, we're told the King of Morgul repeated his challenge, taunting the king that to the faint heart of his youth he had now added the weakness of age.
Ouch.
I know, right?
That's like Back to the Future and somebody calling Marty chicken. It's just like, no, you can't possibly not respond. Yeah.
No, exactly. And then Mardil could no longer restrain him, and he rode with a small escort of knights to the gate of Minas Morgul. None of that riding were ever heard of again.
I'm shocked, yeah.
This is my shocked face.
Yes, exactly.
It was believed in Gondor that the faithless enemy had trapped the king. Really think he would be anything other than faithless?
I know.
Just asking.
It's just a single combat. Just me and you. Yeah.
Me and you. Just, like bros.
Mano a
just fight it
mano.
out.
Yeah.
No problem. So anyway, the faithless enemy had trapped the king and that he had died in torment in Minas Morgul. But since there were no witnesses of his death, Mardil the Good Steward ruled Gondor in his name for many years. I bet Mardil was like, I told you.
I told you. What
just
were you
listen.
thinking? And I'm pretty sure some of the escort of knights were kind of like, are you sure? Do we really want to be doing this?
This is a good idea, though.
I'd like to go home. Yeah. Now, that incident there where Eärnur foolishly went off to Minas Morgul was Third Age 2050. We are now in Third Age 3019. That's 969 years later.
It's a couple of years, yep.
It's just a bit. To put this in perspective, the Battle of Hastings took place in 1066, 958 years ago. That is an immense amount of time to have passed.
Yeah, that puts it in perspective.
I mean, it really does, because none of us remember that, like, because our grandparents have told us about it. I mean, it's so far back that we only know it as written history. It is an immense amount of time to have passed. The rule of the stewards is all that the people of Gondor would have known. It's really all they virtually would have known about.
Right.
Contextually. It's something that, I mean, the time of the kings is as ancient to the people of Gondor as the Anglo-Saxon days before William the Conqueror are to us. It's not mythological, but it's a very old history.
Yeah.
Would there have been trouble? Would there have been concerns from anybody about this change in government, do you think? Or is it really even a change in government? Because the stewards kind of ruled as monarchs. What do you think?
Well, you're right. It's not a change in government per se. It's a change in the title of the person in charge as much as anything.
Yeah.
I don't know. You see, this is really interesting. It's a great question because, looking at it as Sarah Brown, Shield-maiden of Rohan, in this particular year, looking at it, I'm thinking, well, I'm not sure I'd want a king foisted on me, but that's me. But let's put ourselves back
Welsh.
In Gondor. I'm Welsh, yes, and all our kings are foisted on us, but don't get me started.
I knew we were going to head there, but all right.
Yes. Anyway. It's an interesting question, isn't it?
Yeah,
I don't know that Denethor was particularly loved by his people.
No. Faramir, though, very much was.
Very much. And here's the thing. Faramir has been, hopping on the good foot and doing the great thing because he's been going around everywhere and saying, the king has returned. This is marvelous. This is wonderful. Yeah. And he is loved. So I think a lot of the people would take their cue from him.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, if this had happened and Denethor hadn't taken his own life, and Denethor needed to be the one to welcome Aragorn back.
Yeah.
Because that is a whole different kettle of fish right there. I mean, Denethor would not be so keen on handing over the crown.
Absolutely not.
No.
I think he would have happily seen Aragorn crowned with a large rock rather than hand him over something nice and silver to wear.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think Denethor would have been very happy about it at all. There would have been a whole hoo-ha.
I think we might even see a civil war to some extent, you know.
You could see it, couldn't you? Mm-hmm. Because he was not Denethor the good steward. That much we have seen. We can, rewind all the way to that conversation he had with Gandalf. When Gandalf says, "For I too am a steward. Did you not know?"
Did you not know? I love that line. Yeah.
That's Gandalf saying, "Dude, I'm stewarding right. What is up with you?"
That is Gandalf saying that, no doubt.
Exactly. So we know, we have known since we came across Denethor that despite his great position, despite his lordly manner, he's actually not been the best of stewards.
No.
So, yeah.
Yeah. It certainly is an interesting speculation. I know. I think we speculated about that before, back when Denethor was still alive. Like, what if, he'd had to face off against Aragorn coming back? But it's such an interesting question. And here the folks of Gondor are looking at a change in the way their society will be run. Like you said, it's not really a structural change. It's not as though they're going from a representative democracy to a total monarchy. It's just they're going from a monarchy run by a steward to a monarchy run by an actual king.
Yeah. And let's also place this in the context of what's been going on, right? A lot of the civilians have had to flee for their lives. Yeah. And goodness knows what's happened to some of them, by the way. The people of the Citadel have endured an awful barrage from the Orc armies and the Witch King et al. Death has been pretty huge around them. It would have been terrifying, because even though they were inside Minas Tirith, which is a very strong citadel, citadels get brought down all the time. And indeed. In fact, Minas Tirith was in great danger.
Oh, that gate had been knocked down and the Witch King ready to come on in and do his thing. And if it weren't for Gandalf on Shadowfax.
Right. Yeah. When you come out of that and someone tells you, oh, by the way, this is the long-lost king, and it's because of him, much as anything, that we're all alive, and isn't it great? And Faramir thinks he's wonderful, and we're going to have a party.
There you go. The guy we all love not only is happy to see him, but is more than happy to hand over his office. And we're going to have a party. Everybody likes a good party.
Everybody likes a good party. Yes. Yeah. And that relief of, we survived. Hey.
Yeah.
Denethor, no, he was our lord, but you know what? He was a bit sucktastic. And now we have this glorious king come in his stead, and a new day. New day. Something that's always struck me, actually, is the difference between Minas Tirith before the Battle of the Pelennor and the Minas Tirith after the Battle of the Pelennor, is that the city seems so grey and sterile to me. Now, of course, that on a practical level is because the civilians have been evacuated. There's no children hanging around, really. Yeah, it just seems cold and sterile. But now the women and the children are returning. There's life in the city. Everything seems to be, it's almost like spring after winter.
Yeah, we do see some color, right? We see the flowers and the garlands, and we see the flower-strewn streets as Aragorn goes up them to his coronation that we'll see later. It's pretty impressive stuff. And you're right, there's a very different flavor in the city now.
Yeah. So back to where we were. Aragorn, Eomer, Imrahil, and the rest are heading towards the city with their victorious army. And this whole scene has the appearance of historical ceremony. Yeah. We commented on that, didn't we, when we finished reading, that it has that sense of a solemn
solemnity.
Yeah, exactly. Now, clearly, there would have been communication between Aragorn and Faramir in the time between March the 25th and May the 1st.
Yeah. I mean, I've got to wonder, was there a scroll somewhere in the libraries that said, this is how you do it if the king comes back from war? Or was this something that Aragorn and Faramir sort of had to develop on the fly? I mean, we'll never know, but it's interesting.
After 900 odd years, I think they'd have trouble finding that scroll.
That's kind of what I'm thinking, right? Yeah. Especially when it's a new king coming back from war. I mean, for that to have been the case, you'd have to have had, well, that wouldn't have happened because under the old laws, the king, if he went out to fight, which he usually did, had to leave his son behind.
Right. Yes.
That was the whole problem with, and I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but the one king whose son then left the city, ended up fighting with a different force and got himself killed. And then the king and his son got killed and there was no king anymore. And that's where you ended up with the, with Eärnur, or Eärnil II, I should say, getting the throne.
Yeah. Oops. Big oops.
Yeah. That's why we have the laws that way. Yeah.
Exactly. So Aragorn, Éomer, Imrahil, everybody, they approach in formation. Their armor's all polished and rippling like silver.
What an image that is. Yes.
Yes.
For a moment, it made me think of the folks of Gondolin when they come out, the 10,000 spears, and you know, I think there's something about that as well, the silver and the rippling. I don't know. That's what it calls to mind, even as a small group.
It calls the sea to mind for me.
Oh, yes, it does.
Like, you know, the light rippling over all of that silver because they're moving.
Yeah.
Be like ocean
kind of a
waves.
Wave formation. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely beautiful. But they don't go right into the city. They stop.
No, they don't.
No, because, you know,
ceremony.
We're not in a hurry to stick a crown on this man's head yet.
No,
they stop a couple of 100 yards or meters away from the walls.
Right. Now, keep in mind that the gate, which was broken by Gron and the Witch King back on March 15th, I mean, it's only been 6 weeks and the city's been a little busy, so it's understandable that they haven't built a new gate yet.
Yeah, we'll let them off on that one, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And though there's no gate, there is a makeshift barrier of some kind. You'd expect that, wouldn't you? Yeah. And there are men there armed and ready, and they're wearing the formal silver and black of the Guard of Minas Tirith.
That's right. And you have other Gondorian leaders there, like Faramir and Hurin, the Warden of the Keys, the job title to which I now aspire. It's a fantastic sight.
Yep. And all the other Gondorian leaders are there. Éowyn, Elfhelm, all of the others of the Rohirrim. People are dressed to the nines for this special occasion. I mean, they've gone in their wardrobe and they said, I've got nothing to wear.
This is the red carpet event of the millennium. Yeah.
Yes.
Speaking of dressed to the nines, let's get to the star of the show, right?
Oh, yes.
In this area in front of the gates, the crowd's pressing in. You've got the knights and soldiers of both Gondor and Rohan, as well as the regular folk of the city and of wider Gondor. I did realize, though, there was a phrase as I was reading it, a great press of fair people in raiment. Well, that lets me out. Only the fair people are allowed to attend, so...
Yes. Can you imagine that's what the guard gate there is actually for? It's not to stop people coming in.
No.
It's to say,
you stay in the city.
No, you're not fair enough. You go to the back. No, not you either. Yeah, you can let them through. I can just imagine. Be worse than a bouncer at the door of a nightclub, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. That's some arbitrary power right there. So regular folk of the city and of wider Gondor as well are there. Yeah.
Right. And you know a huge crowd like that isn't silent, right? There'll be lots of murmuring, there'll be talking, and they go quiet though when the Grey Company, the Dunedain, in this case the Dunedain of the North, the Rangers, step out from the approaching army.
And in front of them, leading them in a slow walk, is Aragorn himself, and he is ready for that red carpet. He's wearing this black mail, which is pretty awesome in itself, I got to say, but it's girt with silver. Ooh. And in this case, girt is just the past tense of the verb gird, which means to encircle with a belt or band.
Always interesting to me how many times Tolkien uses silver as a metal of importance to show something being royal, whereas traditionally it's being something like gold. But gold is a little problematic, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Middle Earth.
That's a good point.
The black with the silver, of course, recalls the formal garb of the guards of Minas Tirith.
Right.
So there's a connection there as well, isn't there? And alongside all of that, he's also wearing, on top of this gorgeous black armor with the silver, a long white sleeveless cloak. It's his mantle.
Yeah.
But there are two accessories he's wearing that we really want to draw your attention to. The first is the Elessar, and that's what's clasping the cloak around him. In the text, it says, the great jewel of green that shone from afar.
That's right.
That's almost second in importance to the other one.
Yeah, the second one is the Elendilmir, and that's the star upon his forehead, bound by a slender fillet of silver.
So let's go ahead and take an extended look at these shiny accessories that Aragorn is wearing for his special day.
So we first looked at this stone up close some 150 episodes ago, the Elisar, back when Galadriel was handing out gifts to the company. Still, it's worth another sidebar here, and I want to go to Unfinished Tales, where we're given the backstory of the Elisar. A jewelsmith in Gondolin named Enerthil, who was the greatest jewelsmith of the Noldor after Feanor's death, crafted it. The text says, "It came into his heart to make a jewel within which the clear light of the sun should be imprisoned, but the jewel should be green as leaves." Now this gem gave the power to heal. The hands of one who held it brought to all that they touched healing from hurt. Enerthil gave it to Idril, who in turn gave it to Eärendil, who ended up healing many at Sirion's Haven and then took it with him when he left Middle-earth.
And then when, in ages after, there was again an Elisar, we're told that there are two possible origins. The text says, "Though which is true only those wise could say who now are gone." The first origin is that the second Elisar wasn't a second one at all, but actually the original, returned by the grace of the Valar and carried back to Middle-earth by Olorin. Now, in this version, he brought it to Galadriel, saying, "This I bring to you from Yavanna. Use it as you may, and for a while you shall make the land of your dwelling the fairest place in Middle-earth." However, he tells her she won't get to keep it. She has to hand it on at the right time, saying, "For before you grow weary, and at last forsake Middle-earth, one shall come who is to receive it, and his name shall be that of the stone. Elisar he shall be called."
I like that origin story. I'm going for that one. That's my preference.
I like that one too.
Yeah, if it's not that, the other origin is that Celebrimbor made it for Galadriel prior to him being diluted by Sauron, and that it was almost but not quite as good as the original. More subtle and clear was the green gem that he made than that of Enerthil, but yet its light had less power. Radiant nonetheless was the Elisar of Celebrimbor, and he set it within a great brooch of silver in the likeness of an eagle rising upon outspread wings. Now when she wore it, all things grew fair, but once she received Quenya, she ended up giving the Elisar to Celebrian, that's her daughter who married Elrond, and from her it went on to Arwen and then to Aragorn.
So in other words, we don't know if the Elisar that Aragorn received from Galadriel in Lothlorien back when she was handing out gifts was the original one made in Gondolin, worn by Eärendil and returned from Valinor by Mithrandir, or a copy made by the same smith who crafted the three rings. But what we do know is that it's another example of the backstories that Professor Tolkien often created, even those that he wasn't sure we'd ever be able to read.
That is a good point. And he did that a lot.
Didn't he, though?
Yeah. I think we both agree that the idea of it being the original Elisar is probably the more appealing origin story. Though how they got it back from Eärendil, I'm not sure.
Yes, but let's not inquire too closely into it.
That's a good point. You just tossed it in there. Catch.
Yes, exactly. I think it's going to be another one of those things that we just hand wave. No, it's fine. It's fine.
Tolkien himself hand wave things all the time. One's mind does not need to boggle over Sauron carrying the ring back to Middle-earth after the downfall of Numenor, right?
Yes. And you know, if it's good enough for Professor Tolkien, it's sure as heck good enough for the Shield-maiden of Rohan.
And I suppose it better be good enough for the Man of the West. So we've also talked about the Star of Elendil before, also known as the Elendilmere. It's been a while, though. The last time that we talked about it, I think, was last season in the third of our episodes on the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, when Aragorn came walking off the ship like a boss wearing it.
But it's come up before. In fact, at that time, we talked about the Blade of Westerness that Merry used to help defeat the Witch King. Back when Tom gave them those swords, he also talked about the men who were overcome by the evil king of Carndum in the land of Angmar. Few now remember them, Tom murmured. Yet still some go wandering, sons of forgotten kings walking in loneliness, guarding from evil things folk that are heedless. The hobbits did not understand his words, but as he spoke, they had a vision, as it were, of a great expanse of years behind them, like a vast shadowy plain over which there strode shapes of men, tall and grim with bright swords, and last came one with a star on his brow.
What a vision that is. And of course, that star on his brow is the Elendilmere. Now, when we read The Disaster of the Gladden Fields in Unfinished Tales, we discover that the first Elendilmere, there are two, and we'll get to that. This time, though, it's not two origin stories, it's actually two Elendilmeres. The first one originally belonged to Silmarillion, the daughter and eldest child of Tar Elendil, the fourth king of Numenor. So it goes way back. In those days, the Numenorian throne went to the eldest son rather than the eldest child. That law was eventually changed. And so the scepter went to her brother. Silmarillion went on to marry a man from Andunier and have a son by the name of Valandil. He was the first of the lords of Andunier, a title granted to him by Tar Elendil. The lords of Andunier were of the faithful, and it was from that line that Elendil, and therefore Isildur and eventually Aragorn, was descended.
Well, that's all fine, but what do Silmarillion and the lords of Andunier have to do with the Elendilmere?
Good question.
Well, it, along with the Ring of Barahir, was handed down through her line of descent. In fact, it made it all the way to Isildur, who was wearing it during the disaster of the Gladden Fields. There we read, Isildur turned west, and drawing up the ring that hung in a wallet from a fine chain about his neck, he set it upon his finger with a cry of pain, and was never seen again by any eye upon Middle-earth. But the Elendilmere of the west could not be quenched, and suddenly it blazed forth red and wrathful as a burning star. Men and orcs gave way in fear, and Isildur, drawing a hood over his head, vanished into the night.
Now, we've used this passage as evidence before to argue that anything that gives its own light would not be made invisible when wearing the One Ring, like the Phial of Galadriel, for example. But as for the Elendilmere, what's important here is what happened to Isildur. There he rose up out of the water, only a mortal man, a small creature lost and abandoned in the wilds of Middle-earth. But to the night-eyed orcs that lurked there on the watch, he loomed up, a monstrous shadow of fear with a piercing eye like a star. They loosed their poisoned arrows at it and fled, needlessly, for Isildur, unarmed, was pierced through heart and throat, and without a cry he fell back into the water. No trace of his body was ever found by elves or men.
Eventually, elven smiths in Rivendell make a replacement for Isildur's youngest son, and only surviving son, Valandil. But Unfinished Tales says, it had not the ancientry nor potency of the one that had been lost when Isildur fled into the dark and came back no more. Still, it was a thing of beauty nonetheless, a fillet of mithril with a white star of elvish crystal. Sound familiar? This is the piece that Aragorn is wearing right here.
That's right.
But that's not all. Once he becomes king, Aragorn goes about with the reordering of his realm, and one of the things he does is restore Orthanc. And there, thanks to Gimli, they find a hidden compartment. The text tells us maybe it had been intended to receive the ring, but it was almost bare. In a casket on a high shelf, two things were laid. One was a small case of gold attached to a fine chain. It was empty and bore no letter or token, but beyond all doubt it had once borne the ring about Isildur's neck.
Then we read, next to it lay a treasure without price, long mourned as lost forever, the Elendilmere itself, the white star of elvish crystal upon a fillet of mithril that had descended from Silmarillion to Elendil and had been taken by him as the token of royalty in the North Kingdom. Every king and the chieftains that followed them in Arnor had borne the Elendilmere down even to Elessar himself. But, and this is where we get the story of that replacement version, Elessar took it up with reverence, and when he returned to the north and took up again the full kingship of Arnor, Arwen bound it upon his brow, and men were silent in amaze to see its splendor. But Elessar did not again imperil it, and wore it only on high days in the North Kingdom. Otherwise, when in kingly raiment, he bore the Elendilmere which had descended to him, the replacement made for Valandil. And this also is a thing of reverence, he said, and above my worth. 40 heads have worn it before.
Aragorn's not alone, of course. Eomer, king of Rohan, as well as Imrahil, the prince of Dol Amroth, are with him.
Not to mention Gandalf the White and 4 hobbits, about whom Ioreth might have something to say next.
Oh, you think?
After the break, of course.
Of course.
Now, we'll get back just in time for Ioreth to give us a brief update in a moment. But first, we want to remind you that there's a lot more talk going on at the Prancing Pony podcast than just us or even Ioreth.
The Prancing Pony podcast has an amazing listener community. They're always coming up with great questions and discussions across all our social media spaces. Check out our common room on Facebook, our dedicated subreddit, Twitter, and more.
On Facebook, just look for the Prancing Pony Podcast. Follow the page to get the news, but you're going to want to join the group for some great discussions.
Or, if you prefer Reddit, find us there at r/prancingponypod. On Twitter and Instagram, we're simply at prancingponypod.
And if you want daily Tolkien content, check out today's Tolkien Times on YouTube and all your favorite podcast apps. It's my new short-format daily show with everything from Mailbag Monday to Silmarillion Saturday. Be sure to check it out at youtube.com/@TolkienTimes and follow @TolkienTimes on all your social media. For now, though, let's get back to your gal Ioreth. Sarah, would you pick up where I left off?
I'd love to. "Nay, cousin, they are not boys," said Ioreth to her kinswoman from Imloth Malui, who stood beside her. "Those are Perrine, out of the far country of the halflings, where they are princes of great fame, it is said. I should know, for I had one to tend in the houses. They are small, but they are valiant. Why, cousin, one of them went with only his esquire into the Black Country and fought with the Dark Lord all by himself, and set fire to his tower, if you can believe it. At least that is the tale in the city. That will be the one that walks with our Elfstone. They are dear friends, I hear. Now, he is a marvel, the Lord Elfstone. Not too soft in his speech, mind you, but he has a golden heart, as the saying is, and he has the healing hands. The hands of the king are the hands of a healer, I said, and that was how it was all discovered. And Mithrandir, he said to me, 'Ioreth, men will long remember your words,' and—" But Ioreth was not permitted to continue the instruction of her kinswoman from the country, for a single trumpet rang, and a dead silence followed. Then forth from the gate went Faramir with Hurin of the Keys, and no others, save that behind them walked 4 men in the high helms and armour of the citadel, and they bore a great casket of black lebethron bound with silver. Faramir met Aragorn in the midst of those there assembled, and he knelt and said, "The last steward of Gondor begs leave to surrender his office." And he held out a white rod. But Aragorn took the rod and gave it back, saying, "That office is not ended, and it shall be thine and thy heirs as long as my line shall last. Do now thy office." Then Faramir stood up and spoke in a clear voice. "Men of Gondor, hear now the steward of this realm. Behold, one has come to claim the kingship again at last. Here is Aragorn, son of Arathorn, chieftain of the Dunedain of Arnor, captain of the host of the west, bearer of the Star of the North, wielder of the sword reforged, victorious in battle, whose hands bring healing, the Elfstone, Elessar of the line of Valandil, Isildur's son, Elendil's son of Númenor. Shall he be king and enter into the city and dwell there?" And all the host and all the people cried, "Yea," with one voice.
Well, when you give him such an introduction, how could you say no?
Yeah, I'm gonna say,
Here is Aragorn, son of Arathorn. We found him in a bar in Bree.
Yeah, here he is. And Aragorn goes, "Hi." "Hi, Smee."
Oh, that's great. At first, though, in the beginning of this passage, we get the long-awaited return of Ioreth, and she has things to say, doesn't she?
I heard the capital letters there.
I'm glad you did.
First, she speaks of the hobbits, describing them as Perrine, which of course is plural for Perian, the word for hobbit. And the collective plural, which we've also heard before, is Perianath. I love those words. It sounds so Welsh.
Doesn't it?
Yeah,
well, I don't know that
it
it sounds Welsh. I just love the sound of them. Perianath, especially the collective plural.
Yeah.
The rumor about Pippin as being a prince is now apparently spread to include all 4 hobbits, as they are now princes of great fame, according to her report.
Well, if Ioreth says it, it has to be true.
Must to be true, right? At least that's the report in the city. She's not. Yes. She's not claiming she really knows for sure.
From Book 5, Chapter 1, Minas Tirith, the text says, "People stared much as Pippin passed. To his face men were gravely courteous, saluting him after the manner of Gondor with bowed head and hands upon the breast. But behind him he heard many calls, as those out of doors cried to others within to come and see the prince of the halflings, the companion of Mithrandir. Many used some other tongue than the common speech, but it was not long before he learned at least what was meant by Ernil Ferianath, and knew that his title had gone down before him into the city."
Now, we'd speculated that part of the reason for this, other than Pippin's arrival with Mithrandir, which alone would have given him status, was Pippin's use of the familiar you with Denethor, because the hobbits don't have that formal version. And we talked about this back in episode 265, but Appendix F clears it up for us really, really nicely. It says, this was one of the things referred to when people of Gondor spoke of the strangeness of hobbit speech. Peregrine Took, for instance, in his first few days in Minas Tirith, used the familiar for people of all ranks, including the Lord Denethor himself. This may have amused the aged steward, but it must have astonished his servants. No doubt this free use of the familiar forms helped to spread the popular rumor that Peregrine was a person of very high rank in his own country.
Right, because, I mean, who else would have the cheek
to
use the familiar?
Hey, how's it going, King?
Hey, dude.
What's up, Chuck? I'm an American. I can do that.
Yeah, I'm not even going to attempt that.
No.
All right, pal. So Ioreth mentions, without actually naming him, Merry, the one she tended in the houses.
Right.
And providing a graphic example of the power of rumours, claims that Frodo and Sam fought with Sauron and burned down Barad-dûr.
That's pretty impressive to burn down the tower that's like larger than every tower ever built. Yeah.
Just with the power of their minds, perhaps.
Exactly. They're telepaths. They're great. They have incredible powers. One's got to wonder if the true story, not burning down Barad-dûr, will eventually replace the rumors and how that will take place over time. Or will it? Will the true story ever replace the rumors? Because it's not like Frodo's going to go around and, give interviews and talk to a bunch of people to clear the stories. Not really an internet to speak of, the fact check these rumors.
No, I mean, obviously, someone will sit him down and say, okay, now tell us exactly what happened. And they will write that down so that it goes into the histories. But the common people are going to be like, yeah, but did he hear about this? And yeah.
Conspiracy theories. Oh, no, they burned it down, man. They burned it down. Yeah.
It'd be like whispers, won't it? It'll go from, they walked all this way to they came on winged unicorns and something like that anyway.
Oh, man. Yep. It's the telephone game all over again. Yeah.
Exactly. So Ioreth is able to distinguish between the hobbits. She notes that it's Frodo, the one who went with only his esquire, who's walking with Aragorn, and that shifts her conversation to the coming king. And
we'll shift our conversation to the coming king too. But first I want to comment on poor Sam, his esquire. It's like Frodo and his servant of the Rings of Power in the Third Age.
I mean,
really? His servant? That's all you get? I think it's manservant, actually, is what it says in that text. But it's man, Sam's the hero, but all right.
Yeah, never mind, hey. She also describes the king as a marvel, despite his not being very soft in his speech. After all, he didn't exactly sit patiently for her long speech in the Houses of Healing, right?
That's the thing. I'm thinking Aragorn, of all people, is actually quite soft in his speech. He's very, he's not rough-edged, really. But going back to that moment in the Houses of Healing, he'd asked Ioreth if she had any of the herbs of healing. Sorry, I had to really emphasize the lack of consonant there.
Sigh.
And she gave a very, very long answer that really boiled down to yes, but not much.
Not much of the herbs of Ealing, is it? Moving on. Yeah, Aragorn replied, one thing also is short. Time for speech. Have you Athalas?
Yeah, she really didn't take the hint at that point. She still didn't exactly give a yes or no. Even after he explained it might also go by the name Kingsfoil. And his response might be what she had in mind here about his not being soft in speech. And now, dame, if you love the Lord Faramir, run as quick as your tongue and get me Kingsfoil if there is a leaf in the city.
But he's got the healing hands. And she begins to retell her part of that segment of the story. But alas, she doesn't get to finish her tale because a lone trumpet blows and absolute silence comes after.
The steward and the warden of the keys walk from the area of the gate. Again, there is no actual gate. It's still in shambles. Followed by the citadel guards in full gear carrying a small black box. And it's worth noting, for me and the rest of our American listeners, casket in this context does not mean coffin, as it often means here in the U.S.
Right. The original meaning of casket, and it's still the use everywhere but North America, mostly because you just have to be different,
we do.
Is a small ornamental box or chest for holding jewels, letters, or other valuable objects.
Right. So this is not Eärnil's coffin, since the body of Eärnur was never recovered. This is just a small box that, as we'll see later, contains the crown of Gondor. And it's made of lebethron, or lebethron. I'm still trying to figure that one out myself. A wood that we saw back in Journey to the Crossroads as Faramir gave Frodo and Sam staves of lebethron. We really don't know much about the wood beyond that it is beloved of the woodwrights of Gondor, although Flora of Middle-earth speculates that it may have been oak.
And that actually would make sense because that would be a very traditional wood to use for something as important as this kind of casket.
Yes.
Now, you talked about this a little in episode 249, but Parma Elder Lamberon, number 17, gives us a little about the word at least. The lebeth part is related to Quenya lepse, meaning finger, possibly because its leaves, like a chestnut, were shaped like a fingered hand.
That's right. And the ron suffix is from oron, meaning tree. But we're told that the reason that the word is lebethron and not lebethorn is by association with an unrelated word, runda, meaning smooth or polished, because the woodwrights who loved it often polished it smooth.
And it may be that one of the reasons we don't have a lot on this word, though, is because Tolkien didn't really land on it until near the end of the process. In The War of the Ring, Christopher Tolkien explains that the tree of which the staves were made was first named Melinon, then Lebendron, and finally Lebethras, all these changes being made in the act of writing. Now, that was unusual for Tolkien, right?
Yeah, usually he landed on things. No, you're right. It's absolutely not unusual at all.
Not at all.
Back to the scene. Faramir kneels before Aragorn and ceremonially offers the Rod of the Stewards, which is notably not Rod Stewart. I just want to be really clear. I knew you were going to groan at that one. Like, I'm going to get it with this one. As he gives up the role and the office. But Aragorn refuses. He explains the job of the steward isn't eliminated. You are not being reduced in force.
Yes, I do not accept your resignation.
That's right.
And more than that, he confirms that the role is a hereditary one, as it has been since the death of the steward Pelendor. And he had been the steward to King Ondoher, was central in the rejection of Arvedui's claim to the throne.
That's right. Now, Pelendor then served as steward to Eärnil II until his death in Third Age 1998. After his death, the title of steward became hereditary, and the role was taken by his son, Verondil, and it was his son, Mardil Varanwe, that became the first ruling steward after the death or disappearance of Eärnur. So Aragorn says, basically, do your job, man.
Yep, get cleaning that office or something. Anyway.
Here's the duster.
Yeah, Faramir announces the arrival of the king. We don't just announce it. He gives in the, real big introduction.
This is a big announcement, yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't just name Aragorn. He gives all his roles and titles to this point anyway.
Yeah. I mean, remember, the Dunedain of Arnor are the Rangers, and that there are still Dunedain in Gondor. So he says, Aragorn, son of Arathorn, chieftain of the Dunedain of Arnor. And
right.
There just aren't a lot of Dunedain in Gondor anymore. Now, the Star of the North here is the Elendilmere, which we talked about earlier.
And the sword reforged is, of course, Andúril, the Flame of the West, the sword reforged from the shards of Narsil, Elendil's sword that was originally made in the deeps of time, most likely by Telchar, the dwarven smith of Nogrod.
The part about whose hands bring healing certainly references the confirmation of his descent from Lúthien's lineage. And speaking of lineage, we get his lineage through Valandil, the youngest son of Isildur.
Right, and all of this is followed by a request. Shall he be king and come live with the people in Minas Tirith? To which, not surprisingly, there is a very loud yes.
Except for one guy who goes, I didn't vote for you. That had to be coming at some point in this episode. Yeah. All right.
Bringing in strange men off the fields is no system of government.
Oh, man. Good stuff. All right.
Do you want to bring us into the next bit?
I want to spend... No, I do. I could do another 10 minutes of Python on this, but we'll go on and pick up from here. Men of Gondor, the lore masters tell that it was the custom of old that the king should receive the crown from his father ere he died. Or if that might not be, that he should go alone and take it from the hands of his father in the tomb where he was laid. But since things must now be done otherwise, using the authority of the steward, I have today brought hither from Rathdinan the crown of Eärnur the last king, whose days passed in the time of our long fathers of old. Then the guards stepped forward, and Faramir opened the casket, and he held up an ancient crown. It was shaped like the helms of the guards of the citadel, save that it was loftier, and it was all white, and the wings at either side were wrought of pearl and silver in the likeness of the wings of a seabird, for it was the emblem of kings who came over the sea. And 7 gems of adamant were set in the circlet, and upon its summit was set a single jewel, the light of which went up like a flame. Then Aragorn took the crown and held it up and said, Et eirello endorenda utulien, sinome maruvan ar hildinyar ten ambermetta. Et eirello endorenda utulien, sinome maruvan ar hildinyar ten ambermetta. And those were the words that Elendil spoke when he came up out of the sea on the wings of the wind. Out of the great sea to Middle-earth I am come. In this place will I abide, and my heirs, unto the ending of the world. Then, to the wonder of many, Aragorn did not put the crown upon his head, but gave it back to Faramir, and said, By the labor and valor of many I have come into my inheritance. In token of this, I would have the ring-bearer bring the crown to me, and let Mithrandir set it upon my head, if he will. For he has been the mover of all that has been accomplished, and this is his victory. Then Frodo came forward and took the crown from Faramir and bore it to Gandalf, and Aragorn knelt, and Gandalf set the white crown upon his head and said, Now come the days of the king, and may they be blessed while the thrones of the Valar endure. But when Aragorn arose, all that beheld him gazed in silence, for it seemed to them that he was revealed to them now for the first time. Tall as the sea kings of old, he stood above all that were near. Ancient of days he seemed, and yet in the flower of manhood. And wisdom sat upon his brow, and strength and healing were in his hands, and a light was about him. And then Faramir cried, Behold the king!
Oh, wonderful.
Oh, okay, I'm getting chills. That whole passage.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, exactly. I mean, this is such a moment for
Isn't it?
Aragorn. He's worked his entire life towards this moment. And I think it doesn't let him down as a moment. You know, you can build up to something.
Not.
And no, this is incredible.
This lives up to it in every way. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, we skipped a bit with Ioreth. Alan says he's sorry, but I haven't forgiven him yet. But she explains that this is indeed a ceremonial reception of the king, saying, you know, after all, he's already been here and he's talked to me. But then she talks about, you know, the recalling of a ceremony. How?
Yeah, in living memory, there hasn't been a ceremony.
No. So what is she talking about?
Yeah. I don't know. Part of me thinks this is sort of her knowledge of the big city. I mean, look at the way she phrases it to her kinswoman. This is just a ceremony such as we have in the city, cousin. There's maybe a little bit of that sort of urbane knowledge, you know, trying to show off her little inside position, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
not in a bad way. I'm not throwing any shade on Ioreth, and don't get me wrong.
No. But I mean, she's obviously not seen a ceremony of a crowning of a king before.
Oh, heavens no!
But I'm sure they have plenty of ceremonies in somewhere like Minas Tirith anyway.
Yeah,
you know, Denethor's going to be the type who would kind of like his annual ceremony of, hey, it's me kind of thing. You could see that being a thing, couldn't you?
That's true. I definitely could. Yeah. But once again, it's time for Ioreth to take a break as Faramir continues the ceremony.
And he cites the lawmasters who presumably have got access to all those old scrolls that record previous coronations.
Mm-hmm.
Again, not something they've done recently, but can you imagine in the preceding days, they're all down, they go, I know it's here somewhere. I know it's here somewhere.
We got to keep digging. We got to look this up. 30 years ago.
Yeah. Exactly.
So Faramir explains the manner of the transfer of leadership was standardized. You either had the father giving it to his son before he dies, because remember, Númenóreans knew when their time was coming and they could choose how to respond and when to go. Or if the father had died in battle, for instance, the son would go to his father's tomb and retrieve the crown.
And it's interesting that the crown would be buried with the dead king instead of set aside to be given to the son when he, let's say, returns from war.
Right.
But we can't do that. So Faramir, with his powers of the ruling steward, has himself brought out the crown.
That's right. Note that it is the crown of Eärnur, the last king. But it was not retrieved from Eärnur's tomb because they never got the body of Eärnur back from Minas Morgul. That may be a technicality, and one still presumes they had a monument of some kind to their last king. The crown would have been kept safe within it, but Faramir didn't have to pry this out of the hands of a king who'd been dead for 1,000 years, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I'm sure he was pretty grateful for that.
Yeah.
Also pretty grateful for the fact that Eärnur didn't go riding off to meet the Witch King wearing his crown.
Yeah. Then we got to make a whole new one. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, the Citadel guards bring the black Lebethron box to Faramir, who opens it and brings out the crown of Gondor. And the text says it's shaped like the Citadel guards' helms, but higher, all white, with its wings made of silver and pearl, 7 adamants, possibly diamonds, in the circlet, and a single big jewel on top. Note it's not gold again, right?
No, it is not. It's
gold.
It's white and silver to go along with the black and silver armor and the white cape. I mean, this is a really stark, beautiful look.
Right. And quite pure.
It really is. And again, folks, we say maybe diamonds in the place of adamant. It's because adamant is a mythological gem. It's not a real gem, but its descriptions in mythological writings certainly make it sound like it's diamond. It's a notoriously hard substance, and obviously diamond being the hardest substance we have, it puts one in mind of diamonds rather than any other particular gem.
Yep, I agree.
So in a footnote to an entry in Appendix A, we learn more about this crown, and this is as good a place as any to share this. So the footnote comes in the part of the story after the death of Arvedwi, the last king of the North Kingdom.
There we read, "Yet the line of the kings was continued by the chieftains of the Dunedain, of whom Aranarth, son of Arvedui, was the first. Arahael, his son, was fostered in Rivendell, and so were all the sons of the chieftains after him, and there also were kept the heirlooms of their house, the ring of Barahir, the shards of Narsil, the star of Elendil, and the scepter of Annúminas."
Now, the footnote explains that the scepter was the chief mark of royalty in Númenor. How, even though the scepter of Númenor is said to have perished with Ar-Pharazôn, the one that Elrond will give to Aragorn later in this chapter, was the silver rod of the lords of Andúnier, and is now perhaps the most ancient work of men's hands preserved in Middle-earth, as it was more than 5,000 years old at that point.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And again, it's silver. It's silver.
I'm just still baffled by 5,000 years. Find an artifact from 3000 BC that's in that kind of shape, right?
Yeah.
That you can still use as
So you could still use it. Yes. Yeah.
Oh, that's just amazing.
I mean, there's a number of things that have been found here in Wales that are many, many, many thousands of years old. There's one called the Golden Talk, which was pinched by the English. We don't talk about it very much, but it's stunningly beautiful, and it looks glorious and could be worn now, except of course it's in a museum.
Well, of course.
But there's not going to be too many artifacts around that are literally usable.
5,000 years old.
Yeah, but we're here about the crown.
Yes, that's true. We are.
So here's what the footnote has to say about that. The crown of Gondor was derived from the form of a Númenorian war helm. In the beginning it was indeed a plain helm, and it is said to have been the one that Isildur wore in the Battle of Dagorlad, for the helm of Anarion was crushed by the stone cast from Barad-dûr that slew him. But in the days of Atanatar al-Karin, this was replaced by the jewelled helm that was used in the crowning of Aragorn.
Yeah, now I'm just having really bad visions of what the helm of Anarion would look like, and just so sad.
Squishy. Very squishy.
Oh. So Atanatar al-Karin, let's talk a little bit about him, because this is the guy who made this crown. He was the 16th king of Gondor. He reigned from Third Age 1149 to 1226, so that would make the crown over 1,800 years old, plus or minus, depending on when it was made during his reign. It's not a surprise that Atanatar would make such a gaudy helm. He was somewhat notorious. His father, King Hyarmendikil, was the one who finally defeated Harad. He'd reigned for 134 years, and we're told that in his day, Gondor reached the summit of its power. But his son, not so much. He lived in great splendor, so that men said precious stones are pebbles in Gondor for children to play with. But Atanatar loved ease and did nothing to maintain the power that he had inherited, and his 2 sons were of like temper. The waning of Gondor had already begun before he died, and was doubtless observed by its enemies. The watch upon Mordor was neglected.
It's the same old story, exactly what happened back in Numenor, right? Yeah. Instead of maintaining it, you just get all entitled and slide down that slippery slope.
Exactly. Yep. I don't need to do anything because we're already where I need to be. Yeah.
Right. Yes. So not a great king,
no,
but a pretty beautiful crown. And speaking of which, Tolkien drew a sketch of this crown in letter number 211 to Rona Beer, where he explains that the Númenóreans of Gondor were proud, peculiar, and archaic, and I think are best pictured in, say, Egyptian terms. In many ways they resembled Egyptians, the love of and power to construct the gigantic and massive, and in their great interest in ancestry and in tombs, but not of course in theology, in which respect they were Hebraic and even more Puritan. But this would take long to set out, to explain indeed why there is practically no overt religion, or rather religious acts or places or ceremonies among the good or anti-Sauron peoples in the Lord of the Rings. I think the crown of Gondor, the South Kingdom, was very tall, like that of Egypt, but with wings attached, not set straight back, but at an angle. The North Kingdom had only a diadem.
There you go. And he did a really interesting drawing of it. It's a weird drawing, I have to admit.
It is.
You look at it and you're like,
it's very strange.
I have absolutely no aspirations to become the king of Gondor if I've got to wear that thing. But, you know.
Yeah, I'd wear that only on high days and holidays.
Yeah, seriously. And only when nobody's looking at you.
Exactly.
So Aragorn takes the crown and speaks this beautiful phrase, which I have to say, I know he speaks it in the text, but I love how it was sung in the Jackson films. And that's why I tried to do that.
It was a gorgeous moment in the films, actually.
Wasn't it?
It really was.
Fantastic moment.
Oh, my goodness, yes. But, Viggo Mortensen, who else could have played Aragorn in the way that he did? He's just an extraordinary man.
He really is. All the other names that you've seen floated around, including, was it Stuart Townsend, who was originally cast?
Oh, the one who got fired?
The one who got fired, or the other names that you'd heard floated. Like, I'm sure you've heard the rumor that Nicolas Cage was considered for the role.
I know. Can you imagine?
I love Nick Cage, don't get me wrong, but,
but
not for Aragorn.
But I'd rather have Kevin Bacon.
He's a little short for Aragorn, but yeah.
He's a lot short for Aragorn, but yeah, he'd certainly have more sass. But
that's
anyway, yeah. But I mean, Viggo, he's a singer, a musician, a poet, an artist. I mean, what? Is there anything this man can't do?
That's the thing. I mean, he's just this, incredibly talented, does everything kind of creativity. And my understanding is he actually penned the tune for this himself.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And did you know that when he kicked that helmet,
no, don't you dare go there. Oh, man. No, not the toe.
Now, if you want a full-blown grammar breakdown of Elendil's oath, then tune in to the Prancing Pony Podcast Patreon postscript for this episode as we dive into suffixes and tenses to explain as much of this as we can.
Thankfully, though, Tolkien translates it precisely here. Out of the great sea, et Eorello, to Middle-earth I am come, and Dorena Utulian. In this place, or here is actually the literal phrase, in this place will I abide, Sinume Maruvan. Ar Hildinjar, which is, and my heirs or followers. And quick aside, this is from the same root as Hildor, which means aftercomers or followers. It's one of the Elvish words for men, so Hildinjar comes from the same root as Hildor. And that's all, of course, until the end of the world. That's 10 Ambarmetta.
And then when the text says this is what Elendil said when he came up out of the sea on the wings of the wind, it's referring, of course, to the downfall of Númenor and the arrival of the faithful on the shores of Middle-earth.
What a moment that must have been. Just to even be alive. You're Elendil and the faithful, and you've escaped this cataclysmic event. And you don't even know that your ships are going to stay intact to land on the coast of Middle-earth. Oh, what an absolute moment. But Aragorn, in this moment, does not put on the crown, despite Faramir having given it to him and the people cheering their ascent to his kingship. Instead, he hands it back to the steward and explains the way he'd like this to go.
I mean, after all, as he says, as he reasons, the only reason I'm king is A, Gandalf set this plan in motion, and B, Frodo bore the ring and got it to the point where it could be destroyed. Without both of these things happening, there is no land of which I would be king.
That's a
Fair
very
enough.
good point. Yeah. So what happens is he asks it to happen after all. He's the king. Frodo takes the crown and gives it to Gandalf, who puts it on Aragorn as he kneels, which, it's more humility, but it's also ceremony, of course.
Right. And of course, it's very traditional for this to happen because even though you're being crowned the monarch, you are supposed to be in service to your country.
Exactly.
Hence the humility. Now, of course, for many monarchs, that would be the one and only time they showed any humility, but I'm sure that's not the case for Aragorn.
I'm hopeful it's not.
Now, Gandalf's blessing here is expanded from the original. As first published, it just said, "Now come the days of the king, and may they be blessed," which are great words, but I love them more.
Exactly. Tolkien added that last part, "while the thrones of the Valar endure," in the second edition in 1965. And I just want to give a hat tip to Hammond and Skull, who pointed this out in their Reader's Companion.
Now, as an aside, this is only the third time the Valar are mentioned in The Lord of the Rings. So in Of Herbs and Stewed Rabbit, when Faramir's rangers ambush the Southrons and the Mumak charges, Damrod cries out, "May the Valar turn him aside."
That's right. And of course, my favorite mention of the Valar is at the end of the Ride of the Rohirrim, when Theoden leads the charge to the Pelennor. I love this moment when we read that he was borne up on Snowmane like a god of old, even as Orome the Great in the Battle of the Valar when the world was young. That's like my favorite textual ruin in the entire book.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing about the Ride of the Rohirrim that isn't just absolutely awesome, but that is an awesome moment in it.
Absolutely, it is. Yeah. And I part of me wants to have been able to experience that in 1956 and no, I have no idea who Orome is. I have no idea who the Valar are, but wow, I want to know more. Right.
And you're just kind of accepting it and think, okay, all right.
And then you got to wait 21 years to find out. Yeah.
It is, however, the only mention of their thrones.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Now, but we read about the thrones in the Silmarillion. After Yavanna sings the trees into existence, the Valar sat silent upon their thrones of council in the Mahanaxar, the Ring of Doom.
That's another one of those words I love, the Mahanaxar. Ooh.
Oh, yes. It's got a real crunchiness to it.
Doesn't it? Yeah. So Melkor, after being bound for 3 ages in Mandos, was brought again before the thrones of the Valar. And then they're also mentioned in Unfinished Tales. Cirion names them in his Oath to Eorl, saying, Nai tiruvantes I harar mahalmasan minumen, which means, be it that they will guard it who are sitting upon thrones in the west.
Aragorn, now crowned king of the United Realms of Gondor and Arnor, stands up, and it is as if everyone is seeing him for the very first time.
Let's be clear, folks. When the text says tall as the Sea Kings of old, that means really tall, because the Sea Kings of old were really, really, really tall.
Right.
Their ranga, which is a measurement of length, was similar to but longer than our yard. It was a lot closer to a meter, being about 38 inches instead of 36 inches. It's about 97 centimeters. Yard is only about 91 centimeters. And that's because they were so much taller.
I can't believe we're going back to this exciting appendix in Unfinished Tales so soon. We were just here talking about Faramir's mother Morwen recently.
That's right.
But let's do it. Númenorian linear measures.
Contain your excitement, folks.
I mean, I love the Unfinished Tales, but there's some maths and stuff.
There is some maths. That's true.
So anyway, so it's in the appendix to The Disaster of the Gladden Fields, and in it we read, Turangar was often called man-high, which at 38 inches gives an average height of 6 feet 4 inches, but this was at a later date when the stature of the Dunedain appears to have decreased.
Mm-hmm. Later, it is, however, said of the great people of the past that they were more than man-high. Elendil was said to be more than man-high by nearly half a ranga, but he was accounted the tallest of all the Númenorians who escaped the downfall.
It must have been so tough getting trousers.
Seriously, just ordering any clothing at all or having anything made. We talked about this in episode 167. Nearly half a ranga taller than 6'4" average means that Elendil was about 7'10".
Yeah, I mean, it'd have been great on the basketball team.
Oh, he would have been the basketball team.
Yeah. Now, not that Aragorn appears to be 7'10". That really would have been hard to hide.
Yeah, that's
true. No one is taller than Elendil the Tall. But if 6'4" is man high, that's a bare minimum height for Aragorn at this point, and that's just shy of 2 meters tall.
Now playing for your Los Angeles Lakers, at small forward, number 88, Aragorn, Alessa, Estel, Strider, Wingfoot, Longshanks.
And as a non-basketball person, can I just say small forward?
Well, believe it or not, 6'4" would actually be more like a shooting guard. 6'6", 6'8" is going to be a small forward. 6'10" is going to be your power forward. I don't think he's going to be big enough to be a power forward.
Okay. Well, at 5'2", I'm saying I would be perfectly happy at 6'4". But anyway.
At 5'9", I would be ecstatic to be 6'4". Are you kidding me? That'd be fantastic. But 6'4" is truly his minimum. I mean, he's got to be more like 6'5", 6'6", but yeah, he's tall.
And it's almost like when he puts the crown on, when he stands before them, it's almost like he's grown.
Yeah.
Yeah, grown in stature.
The helm that's really tall isn't going to hurt.
That's going to add to it, isn't it? It's a bit like him, it's a bit like having lifts, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Like wearing some platform shoes.
But he's not just tall, and I want us to linger here, ancient of days and yet in the flower of manhood.
I love that.
Because, I mean, he's 88 years old at this point. I mean, he's older than the Man of the West. But he won't pass away until he's 210.
Wow, man.
I know. I just couldn't let that fly by, though.
No.
Another 122 years of his life is ahead of him, so he really is in the flower of manhood.
Unlike this Man of the West. That phrase, though, flower of manhood, is interesting. It seems to be another way of Tolkien reminding us that Aragorn's masculinity isn't always described in purely masculine terms.
I love that,
flower. It's a softer edge, right? And we get more of this balance, too. A reminder of why healing isn't a feminine thing in the next line. Wisdom upon his brow, strength and healing in his hands. Strength and healing. It's both.
Not to mention a literal visible light surrounding him.
That is a blink and you miss it moment. I want to, I don't know, do you have anything that you can add here? Where is that coming from?
The
Valar?
It's hard to say. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've read some Christian scholarship that reads this as being, a Christ-like figure. I don't agree. I don't think that Tolkien would have wanted to read Aragorn as a Christ figure. He shied away from making those kinds of points here. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I think there were elements of Christ figures in multiple characters, but only elements. Like it's not, you could never clearly say that any one character is a Christ figure, I don't think.
Exactly. So there's all sorts of ways in which there could be light surrounding him. I mean, it could be the fact that, let's remember, he's wearing a white cloak and a silver helm and the sun is shining.
That's
and
fair.
So,
it could just be actual physics.
He looks like he's glowing in the sunlight.
That's boring, Sarah. That's boring.
Come
on.
Care. No, I mean, okay, it might be boring, but it also adheres to this world.
That's true. Yeah.
Because Tolkien doesn't give us glowy people.
He gives us elves. And maybe this is a little bit of
not
that.
Humans.
No, but Aragorn does have some elvish blood. Maybe this is just that Luthien in him that is coming through. Because remember, all the kings of Gondor would have been descendants of Luthien. That's why the healing, the kings of the hands of the king are the hands of a healer.
But when we talk about Aragorn being a descendant of Luthien, it's rather a long time and quite a few generations ago.
It's just a couple drops. Yeah, there's not much.
I'm not denying his ancestry at all, but I think expecting him to do a Glorfindel is asking a bit much.
I think you're right about that. Yeah, he's not going to be pulling a Glorfindel. That's fair.
Exactly. But this is a moment in which things come together, and the natural world is a part of all of these things coming together. The natural world is about to go through a regeneration. When you get to the scouring of the Shire and all of that comes on, but Tolkien often embeds the story in the natural world.
He does.
And the sun is part of that. Here
Very
we
much
have
so.
It's shining down upon him. And this, it might sound a bit boring. I don't think it's boring because I think he's almost being anointed with the light from above.
Well, and let's remember that the sun, in Tolkien's world, in Middle-earth here, the sun isn't just a ball of gases at the center of our solar system. It is the descendant of the tree.
Right.
of Lauderland. It
Right.
is itself a thing placed in the sky by the Valar. So I can see how that actually works to also represent, in a way, sort of a slight nod from the Valar.
Yeah, it's a blessing.
Because even if it is the sun, it's the sun shining directly on the king. It's almost a follow-up to Gandalf's "May the days of the king endure while may they be blessed while the thrones of the Valar endure." Yeah,
Right.
I can see that. Okay.
And then he's bathed in light. And actually, I think that's highly
that
symbolic.
fits. I can go with that. I'm thinking sun in the more, ball of gas sense. But as I started to think it through and I realized we're talking about the internal consistency of reality that Tolkien writes in his stories, if we look then at what the sun really is here, then that works. That works.
Right.
I like that a lot.
Yep.
Even if I thought that was mildly boring, I was just giving you a hard time, right? That was just...
You give me a hard time. Never happened before.
Never.
Unprecedented.
Absolutely. As an aside, folks, according to the Tale of Years in Appendix B, 2 events happened today. The crowning of King Elessar, which we've just seen, and this one. Elrond and Arwen set out from Rivendell. Now, clearly, though we have referenced the films before, referencing them here, Jackson compressed the timeline. Arwen was not right there after Aragorn got his crown. But the point serves to remind us of what Elrond told Aragorn in the tale of Aragorn and Arwen. Arwen Undomiel shall not diminish her life's grace for less cause. She shall not be the bride of any man less than the king of both Gondor and Arnor.
Yeah, that's called, having a little bit of ambition for your daughter. That's
Yeah,
for sure.
Seriously. Mm-hmm. She's going to marry down, but she's not going to marry that far down. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I'm not sure how they'd have got word of the scheduled coronation, but maybe a little of that Osanwe we've talked about before, that ability to communicate telepathically.
That's possible.
Possible.
Gandalf in particular would have been able to, clearly communicate that to Elrond. So after he stands, the king that is, Faramir announces what we've been waiting for since we first saw Strider in the shadows of the common room at the end of the Prancing Pony in Bree. Behold the king. And I just got chills reading that. Absolutely amazing. Well, we're going to skip a paragraph and then I'm going to have you pick up after that.
Okay. In his time, the city was made more fair than it had ever been, even in the days of its first glory. And it was filled with trees and with fountains, and its gates were wrought of mithril and steel, and its streets were paved with white marble, and the folk of the mountain laboured in it, and the folk of the wood rejoiced to come there, and all was healed and made good, and the houses were filled with men and women and the laughter of children, and no window was blind nor any courtyard empty. And after the ending of the third age of the world into the new age, it preserved the memory and the glory of the years that were gone. In the days that followed his crowning, the king sat on his throne in the hall of the kings and pronounced his judgments. And embassies came from many lands and peoples, from the east and the south, and from the borders of Mirkwood, and from Dunland in the west. And the king pardoned the Easterlings that had given themselves up, and sent them away free, and he made peace with the peoples of Harad, and the slaves of Mordor he released, and gave to them all the lands about Lake Nurnen to be their own. And there were brought before him many to receive his praise and reward for their valour, and last the captain of the guard brought to him Beregond to be judged. And the king said to Beregond, Beregond, by your sword blood was spilled in the Hallows, where that is forbidden. Also you left your post without leave of lord or of captain. For these things of old death was the penalty. Now therefore I must pronounce your doom. All penalty is remitted for your valour in battle, and still more because all that you did was for the love of the Lord Faramir. Nonetheless you must leave the guard of the citadel, and you must go forth from the city of Minas Tirith. Then the blood left Beregond's face, and he was stricken to the heart and bowed his head.
Heartbreaking. Just a heartbreaking moment for him. But we'll go back to the beginning of that section. In fact, the part that we skipped. Horns are blowing. The king goes up to the replacement gate, and the Warden of the Keys, again, my new goal in life, opens it up for him.
And Elessar makes his way all the way up the 7 levels of the city to the same music we observed earlier, and the streets covered in flowers.
Like we talked about, the city looks different now, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, color, life, beauty, all of those things that make the city feel totally different in tone and feel.
Yeah. I wonder how long this procession would have taken to get all the way up, because that's not a small walk to go up those 7 levels and weaving back and forth up the mountain. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it would have taken quite a few hours, but then
imagine.
he would have wanted to show himself to all the people, wouldn't he?
That's true. He would have wanted to be, my goodness, that must have taken all day. I mean, you think, Yeah,
that's a long old way.
That really is. Well, when he gets there, his standard, that's the tree and stars in the black and silver, is raised above the citadel in place of that simple white standard of the stewards for the first time in nearly 1,000 years.
And we get a quick glimpse of the future of the city during his reign of 122 years, because we're told that Minas Tirith ends up being even more beautiful than when it was first made. And that really is saying something, right?
That is, because the city's been around a very long time. There have been 33 kings, not to mention 26 ruling, 27 if we count Faramir. So there had been essentially 60 rulers of this place. And the city had never been like this? Wow.
Well, it just tells you, that the city had actually kind of stagnated, I think is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, and I think it's something that we saw Gimli observe when he was with Legolas in the city about the stonework. There's good stonework here, but it's the older stonework.
Right.
And that observation that men have kind of gone downhill.
Yeah, and also Minas Tirith, the whole of Gondor, I think, has stopped looking and moving forward.
Yes.
It's so busy holding on to its past and looking backwards. And Denethor was as guilty as anybody of doing this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a fair point. And that's always a weakness, even of the elves, of this sort of looking back and preserving. It's something that Tolkien was pretty clear about in his letters, saying that was a problem for the elves. Their preservation's one thing, but I think we might end up talking about this next week. But there's a quote where he talks about how they just want to keep reading the same chapter over and over again.
Yes.
The same few pages in a book. So we get these marble paved streets. We get a huge parks project that benefits the local fountain builders union. We get new gates. For more on the gates, we go to Appendix A on Durin's folk. There we read, after the fall of Sauron, Gimli brought south a part of the dwarf folk of Erebor, and he became Lord of the Glittering Caves. He and his people did great works in Gondor and Rohan. For Minas Tirith, they forged gates of mithril and steel to replace those broken by the Witch King.
Yep, but I especially like the mention of the folk of the mountain and the folk of the wood, which brings together the dwarves and the elves, presaged, of course, by the great friendship between Legolas and Gimli that's been forged during their time.
Exactly. Although I do note it's the dwarves that do the work and the elves are apparently tourists.
Well, of course, yes. Darling, one does not want to get one's hands dirty.
No.
But it's really describing an ideal. So much so that it ends up described as preserving the memory and the glory of the previous age of the world. Is that a problem?
Well, like we said with the elves a little bit ago, they preserve their history via the rings. I guess the interesting thing is here it's done without any magic of any kind, it would seem. Right? They don't have rings of preservation like Galadriel and Elrond have. So it is an issue, like you said, looking backwards and not looking forward. That's going to be a problem. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that we see with Aragorn is he looks forward very much.
Right, exactly. So hopefully what we're seeing here, and it's another of Tolkien's great things, is balance.
Yes.
Balance between preserving that which is great about your past, but moving forward at the same time.
Uh-huh.
You can't just hold on to the past because that's what they were all doing. And that's how it ended up in the state that it was.
Exactly.
Right. But if we come back from this long look forward into the days immediately following the coronation, what's happening with Aragorn?
Well, he's doing his job, right? He's running the kingdom by issuing rulings and judgments to people from all over, from the east, from the south, from Mirkwood, from Dunland. He is specifically said to pardon those Easterlings that had surrendered and to have even reached a peace with the Haradrim.
Yep, and he gave the lands of southern Mordor around the inland sea of Lake Nurnen to the slaves that had been held captive by Sauron. And remember, these are people, not orcs.
Right.
And before we get to Beregond, we should pull a few quotes from the letters about this time in Gondor.
Yeah. Letter 91 to Christopher in 1944, as Tolkien is still working out the story, he says that the final scene will be Frodo joining Bilbo, Elrond, and Galadriel in the Grey Havens. And he writes, "So ends the Middle Age and the dominion of men begins, and Aragorn, far away on the throne of Gondor, labors to bring some order and to preserve some memory of old among the welter of men that Sauron has poured into the west. But Elrond has gone, and all the high elves. What happens to the Ents, I don't yet know. It will probably work out very differently from this plan when it really gets written, as the thing seems to write itself once I get going, as if the truth comes out then, only imperfectly glimpsed in the preliminary sketch.
I love letter 91, actually.
Isn't it great?
Because in this, you can see he actually really has a good grasp of where he wants the story to go.
Yeah, he really does. Far in advance of it being written.
Exactly. And even mentions, if I recall correctly, that the vision that Frodo had in the House of Tom Bombadil of that far green country, this is where he envisages Frodo going to after the events of this story. Mm-hmm. And he himself references that circling back to that.
Yeah.
Which I think is incredible planning at this point. Of course, he does have a few things in letter 91 that he thinks are going to happen, like Frodo and Sam battling the final ring wraith at Sammath Naur and things like that. But
and that was one of his drafts.
One of his drafts. But if you put that to one side, this plan here in letter 91 is so clear.
It's very, very close to what really got written. Yeah.
Now, in letter 244, which we referenced a few episodes ago about Faramir and Éowyn in Ithilien, Tolkien explains, I did not naturally go into details about the way in which Aragorn as King of Gondor would govern the realm, but it was made clear that there was much fighting, and in the earlier years of his reign, expeditions against enemies in the east. The chief commanders under the king would be Faramir and Imrahil.
And he also explains how he would govern. Yes, he's a monarch with complete power, but he governed the realm with a frame of ancient law, of which Tolkien says he was not the maker. He goes on to say that Aragorn reestablished the Great Council of Gondor, and in that, Faramir, who remained by inheritance the Steward, would be the chief counselor.
So no, George R.R. Martin, there are no details on Aragorn's tax policy. But, you can bet he would have worked it out with his great council.
He absolutely would have.
Tolkien says, I did not naturally go into details about the way in which it would govern. Yeah, because why would you? Who wants to sit down and read
details.
Aragorn's tax policy? Anyway, back to the judgments.
I'd have a whole episode on it, though, if we knew what they were.
Yeah, okay. Well, that would be fun for a certain definition of fun. But anyway, how you get your kicks is entirely up to you, Man of the West. So back to the judgments, because it's time to have a chat with Beregond.
Oh.
Yeah. Now, Aragorn starts out with the truth. You spilled blood in a sacred place, and that's against the law. You left your post without permission, and that's against the law. Then he proceeds to say that death, execution, used to be the usual consequence for these acts. Not going to lie, had us in the first half.
Yeah. I mean, this is some hard stuff. But Aragorn is the one who is now in the position to pronounce his doom. Now, this suggests to me that Aragorn is not bound by a law, but that death, that execution was the customary penalty rather than a mandatory penalty. And so he ends up weighing these mitigating factors. A, you showed great valor in battle. And B, you did what you did because you love Faramir. And let's be honest, who doesn't love Faramir? Éowyn, put your hand down.
And we ended this segment with the bad news.
Yeah.
Beregond is removed from the Citadel Guard. Yeah. And it would seem he's also exiled from Minas Tirith. And this understandably guts the poor man, but he bows his head in acceptance.
Yes, he does.
So, are you going to carry on for us there?
Yeah, we can't leave Beregond hanging. We really can't.
No, poor Beregond. He's been through enough.
He really has. So we're going to come back to Aragorn pronouncing his doom. So it must be, for you are appointed to the White Company, the Guard of Faramir, Prince of Ithilien, and you shall be its captain and dwell in Emin Arnen in honor and peace, and in the service of him for whom you risked all to save him from death. And then Beregond, perceiving the mercy and justice of the king, was glad, and kneeling kissed his hand, and departed in joy and content. And Aragorn gave to Faramir Ithilien to be his princedom, and bade him dwell in the hills of Emin Arnen within sight of the city. For, said he, Minas Ithil in Morgul Vale shall be utterly destroyed, and though it may in time to come be made clean, no man may dwell there for many long years. And last of all, Aragorn greeted Eomer of Rohan, and they embraced. And Aragorn said, "Between us there can be no word of giving or taking, nor of reward, for we are brethren. In happy hour did Eorl ride from the north, and never has any league of peoples been more blessed, so that neither has ever failed the other, nor shall fail. Now, as you know, we have laid Theoden the Renowned in a tomb in the Hallows, and there he shall lie forever among the kings of Gondor if you will. Or, if you desire it, we will come to Rohan and bring him back to rest with his own people." And Eomer answered, "Since the day when you rose before me out of the green grass of the downs, I have loved you, and that love shall not fail. But now I must depart for a while to my own realm, where there is much to heal and set in order. But as for the fallen, when all is made ready, we will return for him. But here, let him sleep a while."
Oh, there's just every moment in this chapter is a moment.
Isn't it? Yeah, I mean, this whole chapter is so good.
It really is. Oh, come on, name a chapter that isn't so good, but this is definitely one of the top ones.
The Maps of Beregond chapter in the Silmarillion.
All right,
All right.
That's fair.
I mean, it's good. It's just this is filled with spectacular moment after moment after moment. It is all threads coming together and the resolution of so many storylines. It's just it brings so much joy and satisfaction as a reader, I think.
Absolutely true. But we begin by bringing Beregond some good news.
Yay!
Oh, yay, Beregond. He really earned this.
I know he did, didn't he?
Yeah, you aren't in the Citadel Guard anymore because you've been reassigned to the White Company, Faramir's own unit.
That's right.
Yay!
Yay!
And speaking of Faramir, though it's not official until the next paragraph, Aragorn spoils his own reveal by calling Faramir Prince of Ithilien.
Yeah. Faramir's like, what? What'd he say?
Hey,
what?
Who? What? Who's the prince?
Exactly. Back to Beregond, not just are you in the White Company, you are the captain of the White Company. You have been promoted. And you're going to live in the hills of Emin Arnon. Those are the ones where the Anduin takes that westward bend before heading south again as you serve Faramir.
I mean, that's pretty much a reward, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is a reward, no doubt.
And we're reminded again of what Beregond did in risking his life to save Faramir, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Aragorn listed off all the things he'd done wrong, but in the end, it was what he had to do.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Beregond is grateful for how Aragorn has shown justice and mercy to him, and he leaves the smile on his face. Justice and mercy.
Yes.
Yeah, not just about the law, because law and justice, as we know, are two very different things.
That is true. That is true. If this had been, the strict application of the law, Aragorn might have said, "I don't want to have to put you to death. It really makes me sad to have to do this, but I'm going to have to kill you."
It says right here. Yeah. Can you imagine Denethor? What Denethor would have said?
Oh, well.
Off with his head?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Especially since what he was trying to do was stop Denethor. But yeah.
Well, yes, but
it's justice is not the same as law, and mercy is even greater. Showing him justice is saying what you've done is forgiven because you've done it out of love for Faramir and because you've shown great valor in battle. Okay, that's justice because those are mitigating circumstances and all of that. But the mercy is in saying you get to be serving the man you love. You get to be with Faramir and the captain of his own White Company, the Guard of Ithilien. And what an absolute reward that is for Beregond.
Yes.
Yeah.
What joy for Beregond.
Yeah.
This is where we see Aragorn has already come into his own.
Yes.
This is who he was always meant to be. A great man. Never mind the fact that he's king. He is a great man.
100%. Yeah.
Following the law is easy. It says here, you do A, B happens.
Yeah.
All right? So you follow the law. But here, he's able to interpret what Beregond has done in the context of the events and then to deliver a judgment that is based, as you said, in justice and mercy.
Mm-hmm.
And it would have been so easy to say, yeah, you broke the law. Sorry. Nice knowing you. Yeah, he doesn't do that.
That's just not who Aragorn is.
Yeah, I think that the issue with Beregond is just one of those ways, because in the same scene, we hear about how he dispenses justice and mercy to the people against whom he was fighting.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. One of the things that makes him a great king is the thing that made him a great man in the first place, which is that balance, which is that mercy and that kindness and that seeking justice, not just seeking to follow the law.
Right.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. So Faramir is now given the official role of Prince of Ithilien. And we don't see it here, but in the appendices, he's also described as the Lord of Emin-Arnon.
Yeah, he starts collecting the titles. Not quite as bad as Aragorn. But
Well, no, nobody's got that many names, except for Turin.
But here's a question. Why there and not Minas Ithil?
Ah, well.
Well, now, it needs to be destroyed in order to be cleansed. No one's going to be living there for a long, long time.
I don't know how long a long time is, but it's going to be a very long time before anybody can live there again. That Vale is a terrifying place right now.
Yes.
So as we talked about before, and just frankly in our last couple of episodes on the Steward and the King before we took our little break for Questions After Nightfall and Tolkien Reading Day, this job for Faramir being the Lord of Emin-Arnon, the Prince of Ithilien, this isn't some ceremonial, easy peasy title. I mean, the Prince of Dol Amroth, Imrahil, has it easy. Faramir, the Prince of Ithilien, not so much. He's a march warden. He's having to reestablish the rule of Gondor in a borderland that's still going to be hostile to it. Tolkien says there's going to be a lot of fighting, and Faramir is one of the two chief commanders under Aragorn to get that fighting done. Now, granted, Imrahil may be sent over to help him because there's not a lot of fighting in Dol Amroth, but Faramir is the one who's going to be bearing a pretty big burden.
Absolutely. And as we discussed a few episodes ago, having Éowyn by his side is only going to help.
Yes, it will. Yeah. And not just because she's turning into a healer, because she will not take joy only in the songs of slaying. Yeah.
Yes. Although I think she's still going to definitely take joy in those songs and sing a few, possibly make up a few for herself whilst wielding a sword.
Mm-hmm. No doubt.
But now we get to a greeting between kings.
Yes.
Aragorn gives Éomer a big hug, and he dismisses any talk of reward because he says, "For we are brethren."
Oh, I love that. And it's just a wonderful reference. It goes all the way back to Cirion and Eorl, right? He talks about this friendship that's been going on between Rohan and Gondor.
We're bros, mate. We're bros.
Yeah, we're bros, man. I mean, this goes all the way back to when the Eotheod came down from the north to save Gondor's backside.
Yep.
And we have been allies ever since. I love it. It's beautiful.
And the respect shown to the previous king of Rohan, Theoden, right? Very important. His body is in the Hallows, and if the Rohirrim wish it, he will stay there alongside the kings of Gondor. And that's not a small offer.
No, it is not. That's significant. Are there
really
any other
is.
kings said to be in the
No,
I don't think so.
No,
No other
absolutely
kings
not.
from no.
Yeah, but alternatively, we can bring him to Rohan, where he can be lain in the mounds outside Edoras.
And that is more proper. And that is, of course, what will end up happening. I will say as a spoiler, there aren't anybody else other than the kings in there now, but there will be. Because not only does the current dead tree get treated like a king and buried in the Hallows, but we read in the appendices that when Merry and Pippin pass away, they are too buried in the Hallows. I love it.
Yeah, that's something, isn't it?
Isn't it? That almost makes me cry. Merry and Pippin. Oh,
I know,
beautiful.
You just gave me literal spine shakes with that one. Yeah. Stop it. I refuse to cry at this point.
So Éomer, we're bros, man. He expresses his love for Aragorn. I've loved you since the day you popped up out of the grass. And I went, what the heck is this? And it's a love that's never going to fail, right? And again, it's another of these really rich examples of brotherly love that we see in Tolkien's relationship between men. And as we've observed, he didn't write a lot of women characters, so most of his relationships are between men. But you look at Frodo and Sam, or Merry and Pippin, or Gimli and Legolas. Aragorn and Éomer are another example of this, and they're committed to the best of each other, and it's beautiful.
It is, and it's also highly emotional.
Yes,
Tolkien does not shy away from the emotions. He allows his characters to love each other deeply, and to be emotional with each other, and to be physical with each other.
Yeah.
To actually, hug and be there for each other.
To embrace, or like with Frodo and Sam, how he lays his head on his chest. And
it's so refreshing.
So much beauty. Yeah.
You know, it's so refreshing
It
in
really
this
is.
day and age of men don't do that.
Yeah.
Which just makes me sad, actually, for men
It
as
does.
much as anything
It
else.
really does. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think they're missing out. But here we have a man who was born at the end of the 19th century, who lost many friends, and, you know, he went through a lot of trauma in his life.
Oh, yeah.
He did not espouse the Victorian stiff upper lip at all. He looked further back in time, to a time of greater sensibility. And he wrote that into this text. And to me, this is goals.
Yeah.
You know, this is how we all should allow ourselves to be, is to be vulnerable and to be open and to be sensitive and allow that emotion between people, because for goodness sake, why not?
And I mean, come on. Can anybody say that Aragorn and Éomer are just not manly enough? Come on, give me a break.
I dare you.
No, please. These are kings of the greatest nations in Middle-earth.
Yeah.
And this has nothing to do with...
Yeah, exactly. It's a bit like calling Éowyn a bit of totty. I mean, I dare you.
Don't do that in front of her.
I would not if I were you.
No.
Although, you know, do it as you are running out of the door.
Well,
and even then I'd do it fast.
Yeah, make sure it's a door that's like 100 yards away. Yeah.
Exactly. But here, we have a presentation of masculinity that says, well, to hell with your ideals where, you know, men are just grim and stiff upper lip and, you know, it's all about that. And no, really, here we have, these are real men.
Yeah.
These are real men.
Real men. Yeah.
Exactly. And they have that balance. And we've mentioned this word a number of times now. But for me, the successful characters, and I don't mean the ones best written, I mean the ones who make it through and do the right things or achieve what they need to achieve, are the ones with the balance, which is why Faramir is Faramir, and bless him, Boromir is Boromir.
Yeah. It's why Finrod is Finrod and Feanor is Feanor.
Exactly.
You're 100% right. Great point. Great point.
So anyway, getting back to the text, after that enormous digression, my apologies.
Oh, it's a great digression. Are you kidding me? That's why that's what I bring you on here for.
I love it, folks. Alan just presses the button and lets Sarah go.
But here's my hint, folks. Here's all I need to do in the outline. Parentheses, discuss. And then boom, there we go for 10 minutes without anything in the notes.
Yeah, what you don't see is Alan on the other side going, oh, you can stop now. You can stop. No, really, you can stop now.
That does not happen. Not until after the 2-hour mark.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Okay, so really I'm coming back to the text now, because Éomer says he has to go back. He has to get his kingdom going. He has to start the healing because the Rohirrim have lost a lot of their best riders. They've lost their king.
They have.
So they're going to return, but they're going to return without Theoden. They're going to return to a country that has gone through war itself, that's lost a lot of its young men and older men, and put it back together.
Yeah.
You know, bring peace to that country as well. So he's got a job to do.
He does. And
so he says, we're going to let Theoden rest here. But then when we've put everything right, when we've made all ready, we'll come and get him and bring him back.
Absolutely. And though we didn't read the last paragraph in this section, we do get a moment between the two that we spent so much time with earlier in this chapter, Éowyn and Faramir.
Yes. Yeah. Because she explains to him that she needs to go home with her brother to help. And yes, of course she does, because, you know, he's going to need everyone around him to help him to get everything back on its feet the way he needs it to be.
Yes.
And to prepare the way for his kingship.
Yeah. Her brother's going to be the king. I mean, she's got some work to do too. Yeah.
Yep. But if we know Éowyn, she's going to embrace that, right?
She will, absolutely.
And she says that she will return once Theoden is finally buried properly in Rohan. And the last point I want to make about this, because yes, folks, I have another point about Éowyn. You knew you weren't going to get away without it, is that she tells him what she's going to do.
Yeah.
And he says, okay.
Yeah.
Right? It's not, I would do this, I would like to do that, or please
she
can I?
doesn't ask for permission.
Oh, no. This is what I'm going to do because I have a job to do. I'm going home with my brother.
Yep.
I'm going to help him sort this out, and then I'll come back when that's done.
Yeah. And there is no sense on her part that she doesn't have to ask his permission.
Exactly.
She doesn't have to say, is it okay with you if I do this? And Faramir doesn't even say anything, or at least in the text. We imagine him, like you said, just saying, okay, then do that. Because that's who Faramir is.
Yes.
I mean, in a way, if it weren't for the fact that he has to probably do a lot of things to help Aragorn get settled and, go and become Prince of Ithilien, he would say, do you need me to come with you and help you? Because that's the kind of guy Faramir is.
Yeah, but they both have a job to do.
They both.
And they both recognize that, and they both do what they need to do.
So it's going to be a long-distance relationship for a little while. Yeah.
Right. And that's one of my many responses to those who worry that with Éowyn deciding that she is going to become a healer and marry Faramir, that this is her dissolving into the little woman, the trad wife.
Oh.
Yes, thank you for that shudder. That's exactly what happens to me when I see that happening.
Yes. Mm.
This to me is another argument against that happening. She doesn't say, pretty please, fiancé, may I?
Now that you own me instead of my uncle or my brother, can you please give me permission to do this? No.
Yeah. No. She lays out what's going to happen, and that is that.
Yeah. I love that. I absolutely love that. Now, as you know, we have laid Barliman's bag in a tomb in the Hallows, and there it shall lie forever among the kings of Gondor. Sarah, what does Barliman have in the bag for us tonight?
Well, I'm afraid Barliman has been far too busy finding his finery for the ceremony of Aragorn's coronation, so there's nothing in the mailbag.
All right. Well, I guess we'll have to see what he brings us next week.
Okie doke.
Well, folks, that wraps it up for another episode of the Prancing Pony Podcast, but join us again next week when Aragorn gets a tree for a wedding gift?
Yeah, he's branching out.
Oh,
folks, Alan, I'll leave it there. Alan and I want to thank the members of Team PPP, editor Jordan Rannells, Barliman Becca Davis, social media manager Casey Hilsey, event and Patreon community coordinator Katie McKenna, graphic artist Megan Collins, and website guru Phil Dean. And the man of the West is still cringing on the other side of that microphone.
Yeah, well, you've left me pining for a good pun.
Oh, these jokes have really taken root.
See, that's like the tree puns can keep going. That's like the one thing you can just over and over.
Don't worry, folks. His bark is worse than his bite.
Oh, see, I just can't keep up. Take a minute to check out the prancingponypodcast.com. That is where you're going to find our show notes, outtakes, Prancing Pony Ponderings, and our online storefront where you can get PPP merch, including chapter-specific artwork for Megan.
So please take a moment to visit our library page. The Prancing Pony Podcast has always been about the books, so if you're interested in a book we've mentioned on the show, you'll find a link for it in our library. We get a small amount of compensation when you make your purchase, and we do thank you for that.
Indeed, we do. And we also want to thank our patrons at the Kierdance contribution tier. I'll start with DeMay in Alaska, Chad in Texas, Lance in New Jersey, Paul in Colorado, Joseph in Michigan, Kathy from North Carolina, Carlos in California, Brian in the UK, Ned from Connecticut, Jerry from Washington, Joe in Washington, Erwin from the Netherlands, Ben in Minnesota, Anthony in Texas, Zaksu in Illinois, Brian in Texas, Sarah in New Jersey, and Joshua in Massachusetts.
There's also Lucy in Texas, Erica in Texas, Carson in Oklahoma, Vivian in California, James in Massachusetts, Anne in Kentucky, Sean in New Jersey, Mason in California, Maureen from Massachusetts, John in Japan, Olivia in London, Robert in Arizona, Nick in Wisconsin, Lewis in South Carolina, Thomas in Germany, Craig in California, Bailey in Texas, and Kevin in Massachusetts. Thank you all so very much for your support.
Indeed, thank you.
Now make sure you don't miss any episodes of the Prancing Pony Podcast. Subscribe now through Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or your favorite podcast app.
And one last thing as always, don't forget to send your thoughts, comments, and most of all, who you'd want to put the crown on your head to Barliman at theprancingponypodcast.com. And if you want your voice literally heard, well, just send us audio of your question. Visit podinbox.com/prancingponypod and record your question for us.
Please be sure to still email the question to Barliman, though. Even though Barliman's been a lot more reliable lately, there's still a lot of mail to sort through, and we'll try to get to you just as soon as we're able.
As always, though, this has been far too short a time to spend among such excellent and admirable listeners. But until next time.
Diolch yn fawr, pawb.